Welcome, everybody. This is Doug Dresher from TEDxAsburyPark, and we're very excited to have one of our presenters, David Xing. Welcome, David.
Thank you for having me.
So, David, in doing the research about you, I finally figured out a way, at the very least, to hang up my paintings and pictures straight. But why don't you talk about augmented reality, real world, virtual world, and how that led you to the invention of your augmented reality device called Qubit?
I think at the core of it, if you take a step back, what we saw the disconnect was when you imagine something and how to actually realize it, there was a disconnect there. So we all have gone online, we all have gone house, we all have gone on pictures of Instagram, we all have ideas of what we think our ideal space would be. But actually executing it, that's been the difficult part. So at the heart of this, what we said is we want to make a platform, we want to make a way where anybody sees something they like, they can buy it, they can see how it fits, and then we can help you realize that design that you have without any of the calculations, without any of the measurements, without any of the difficult part that's kind of makes it difficult to actually make it happen. So in the heart of it, that's what we do, right? There's a lot of acronyms that you mentioned before. You know, what's AR, what's VR? Again, at the core, what we say is that we found a way in terms of immersive tech that brings it all together. Where if you have something in your head that you says, oh, this would be cool, you can see how you would fit in your real life space. The retail partners that we work with, you can buy the product and see how their products would fit. And then when it gets here, you can actually execute your design by having products that take you to the precise spots to place it without having to do any of the difficult part. And I think at the core of it, that's what we saw was really needed for people to say, hey, look, I imagine something, I want it to happen. And Qubit and Carta and all the products that we have are different ways to execute that, both indoors, outdoors, etc. But at the heart of what we do is connecting, closing that loop between imagining something and actually having it come to life.
Where do you see this kind of precise measurement technology moving next, and where do you think you can bring it?
That's an excellent question. For us, and we kept going back to the core. The core of it is having a design and then having it executed without any of the mess in the between. So DIY, you're absolutely right, is the first step where we're applying this. But we're working with large-scale tool manufacturers already and applying this for construction. How you build a house, how you build a bridge, how would you do manufacturing with elements of here's the design, how do we actually make it executing it?
When you start a company like Plot, and you bring, and I'm sure you have any number of engineers and thinkers, who are the kind of people who are successful in this industry of pushing the technology forward? What are the traits of the people that you're going to hire for Plot?
You know, and that's something as part of the talk that we're gonna, as part of my talk that we're gonna talk about, is that, you know, you're absolutely right. When you're building something that really didn't exist before, the thing is that things not going right, it's the normal. And when things do go right is when you celebrate. And a big part of what we do is that we have to get people in that accept that when you come in, a lot of the times when you leave that door after work, that day wasn't great. Things didn't go right. A lot of mistakes happened. A lot of things didn't turn out how you wanted to be. And you have to be okay with that. And we as a company have to be okay with that. That's the first part. That's the first trait, that you accept there's going to be challenges. The second trait is that what keeps all of us going is that, you know, out of all those days, things doesn't go right when we leave the door. There's going to be one day where when we leave that door, something that didn't exist before got created that day. And that's going to be worth it. And that's the second trait that we look for, is that you want to be able to change the world, because what we do is really changing the world in a way that never existed before in a way to solve the problem.
In doing a little research, you mentioned that your mom had given you a philosophy about knowing where you want to go and working towards that. Uh, how has your mom's philosophy affected not only your business philosophy, but your life's philosophy as well?
Her point was to me was that, you know, focus on what you really want the end goal to be, but the process, be open about that. So be very strict and be very, very calculated in how you want things, the goal, how the outcome will be, but be very open on how you get there. And I think that's a big part of how, you know, both working with the company and also with the people that we work with. You hire we have some of the people that we think are the best in the world at what they do. And when that happens, you have to let them be the creative lead in a lot of the endeavors that they do.
But as the founder and the CEO and someone who has this very clear vision of where you're going, how do you give up that kind of power and control over over a project that is so near and dear to your heart?
Not easily. And you know, it is a challenge. And I think that's why these are, you know, advice and philosophy and not something that the advice and philosophy are there to remind you, right? When you are sometimes, like you said, something that's so near and dear to your heart, where you says, no, this is the way. And there been, you know, we argue, we talk about this stuff, and this is an ongoing thing. There are times we are gonna say, hey, look, you know, maybe that's just doesn't make sense, and maybe there's something what you just will have to figure out a better way. But I would say that's, again, it's just something that is a process that we keep working on and improving on. The most important thing is that it isn't so much how do we talk it out, but how the different various stages that we have of talking it out. Whereas, okay, you know what, we don't have a consensus now. Let's just not talk about it in this setting. Let's wait a while, you know, maybe after work, let's find a different setting, let's talk about it. And it's more of the process of how to make sure we get there versus this is the meeting, now is a structure that kicks in, and then now we have consensus. It doesn't work like that in our company. It's quite messy, whereas it takes many iterations of it. But I think it's all of us kind of reminding ourselves, okay, let's try to be open about this. Let's put emotion aside. And then through the various settings, hopefully, eventually, we get to the place that we want to be.
And what I think was fascinating is you're saying even in a research model or a business model or a model like yours that's sort of doing both, sometimes the best decision is no decision at all right now because it needs to ruminate.
Yeah, it's like you said, when everybody is near and dear to their hearts about this, and you're arguing about this for 2 hours. You know what? Maybe it is best to just, like you said, let's just take a step back and let's recollect ourselves. Let's find a different setting and let's look at it from a different angle.
Well, Mr. Xing, thank you so much for spending a couple of minutes with us. We are truly looking forward to seeing you on the stage, on the TEDx stage next year. And more importantly to me is, I want to see what the next thing that you invent using this augmented reality is.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I mean, we're very excited to be part of the TEDx program. And now I'm personally excited to, hopefully share some of the stuff we're working on soon.